and welcome to this session that's being organized by the Open University's Faculty of Science, Technology, Engineering and Mathematics. And as part of British Science Week, we're running a whole series of events where academics from the Open University are talking about some of their research and the activities that they do in different disciplines. This morning, our focus is on cybersecurity and security and privacy, and particularly looking at both education relating to cybersecurity and also how we design privacy into Internet of Things technologies. My name is Arosha Bandara. I'm a professor of software engineering at the Open University. And a bit later on, I'll be talking about some of my research and the research that I undertake with colleagues in the School of Computing and Communications relating to how we engineer privacy into smart systems, or the Internet of Things, as it's sometimes known. I'm joined today by my colleague, Dr. Chitra Balakrishna, who's a senior lecturer in cybersecurity at the Open University and leads our cybersecurity curriculum programs. So it's great to have you here, Chitra, and you're going to speak first about cybersecurity education. So I'll hand over to you to make a start.
Thank you, Arosha, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. As Arosha said, I lead the cybersecurity qualifications programs at the Open University. I have both academic and research interests in cybersecurity education, and much of my work during the last 5 years has been focused on how can we change the way we train and teach cybersecurity skills and concepts. And in that context, the use of game-based interventions and game-based techniques is something is of interest to me, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. How can we change the way we teach cybersecurity, and how do games and game-based interventions help in this regard? So let me get straight into my talk. Oops. Apologies for this. My slides were right at the, here we are. So that's the topic of my talk today. How can we change the way we teach cybersecurity, and what's the impact of game-based interventions? One of the quotes that's inspired me the most as an educator is by American author Diane Ackerman. And it is plays our brain's favorite way of learning. I'm hoping someday my teaching practice would be largely directed by play, where learning happens as a happy coincidence. It is in that context my research and my teaching practice has been, it is in that direction my teaching practice is moving during the last 5 years. Play as a pedagogical means to teach and learn has been explored widely in primary and early education setting. It sort of tapers with the secondary education, and it's hardly considered in the adult learning or higher education setting. To set the context to my talk, I'd like to sort of make clear a couple of terminologies that are constantly thrown in this context. The terminologies are gamification and game-based learning. What's the difference between these two? Gamification is defined as applying game mechanics in a non-gaming context, and to make the context more fun and engaging. And the context could be learning as well. And that is mostly done in form of rewards, badges, leaderboards, points, etc. Whereas game-based learning is where the game is the learning. Games are used and designed to achieve a set of learning objectives. It is here where my research interest lies. To give you a quick and dirty demonstration, I've taken this from another workshop that I attended on gamification to sort of give you a quick and dirty demonstration of the power of gameplay. I could request you to try as well. Open up a browser and have a stopwatch on Google, okay? And stop the clock exactly at 3 seconds, not a millisecond more, not a millisecond less. So you have 3 seconds to go. I'm going to try. This is my first trial, and I went way beyond. Second try and improve that. Oops, I'm a little short. My third and final try. Oops, no, nearly there is what I would say. Oh, so the purpose of that demonstration was how many of you would actually try playing it again and again until you actually hit that 3-second mark? I'm sure quite a few of you would. And this basically works on the principle of the near missed effect in psychology. And that encourages players to engage in repetitive actions and organically with no further external trigger to hit that missed target. And this is widely used in setting up gambling businesses, etc. But repetition has some value within the context of learning. Like they say, repetition is the mother of all skills. It's also key to learning. Educators for long have struggled to encourage learners to engage in repetitive learning activities. Strategic use of game and gameplay could ideally make these repetitive learning tasks more fun, more organic, rather than being seen as a chore or as a drudgery. So what is it in games that lends naturally to learning and teaching generally? What's the power of game or game-based learning? Firstly, the most important point about games are usually fun, mostly fun, and give enjoyment to the players. And the players, while they're enjoying, usually exhibit passionate involvement, and passionate involvement is crucial for learning. Games normally have rules, goals, even interactions often, and this offers structure and engagement to the learners, and this is required for effective learning. Story-based games, normally permit players to experience events and scenarios through a narrative. A narrative creates a bond between the learner and the learning content. A well-designed game normally can, encourage intrinsic motivation, as well as encourage players to continue playing, or in this case, continue learning, right? Games have outcomes and feedback, and that offers the learners a flow. There could be adaptation based on the outcomes and the feedback, and also offers a tangible outcome for learning for the learners. There's a sense of contentment, satisfaction for having learned or done something with that outcome or feedback. All of this basically results in an overall positive association with learning process, and that's what I believe games bring on to the table when it comes to teaching and learning in general. But why do I feel, most importantly, actually, before I move to the next slide, games normally permit the players to wrong without negative consequences. And this is probably one of the most important aspects of games. And they're fundamentally less risky when playing a game. This allows the players to try different strategies, new approaches, by controlling the fear of failure. And the interactive trial and error methods normally leads to effective individualized learning. Now, why do I feel games or game-based techniques fit in well with cybersecurity? One of the primary reasons is cybersecurity, as a discipline and as a skill, calls for a change of behavior, calls for aptitude and attitude in addition to technical knowledge and know-how, right? So therefore requires more than providing information about risks and reactive measures. So therefore, current instructional one-size-fits-all methods don't really work for cybersecurity training or education, or at least are less effective. Understanding how different people perceive threats, perceive risks, is critical to effective cybersecurity skills training or even cybersecurity education. So therefore, the traditional teaching methods need to be complemented by more active learning experiences that are offered through gameplay and game mechanics. And therefore, I believe games sort of fit in quite naturally within cybersecurity education setting. Let me quickly go through a few projects I've handled during the past 5 years within the cybersecurity education setting. The Cybergate, a gamified training environment for cybersecurity, was the first project that I led on gamification in 2017. It was funded by Higher Education Academy And we built 2 games to help students learn fundamental concepts of system penetration testing. Those of you who have heard or not heard about it, it is one of those complex technical topics within cybersecurity. The objective was to develop a holistic cybersecurity training environment that sort of just demystifies ethical hacking or system penetration testing techniques. Something that enabled the students to learn and practice their skills in a safe environment, yet in a fun manner. Here's a quick peek into how the games look like. You can actually download these games for free. You'll be provided with a link later in your chat window. Please use them and feel free to download the games and give it a go.
You will be hired as a penetration tester to see if Edgecoin and its cryptocurrency are vulnerable to any cyber threats. In this pilot game, you will conduct information gathering, the first phase of pen testing. You will gather the required information using common techniques such as dumpster diving and social engineering. This will be used to create a successful phishing email to gain additional details from the Edgecoin employees, thus proving that Edgecoin has several security loopholes to address. Look out for the next game from Cybergate, where you will experience how to launch.
So what were the typical game mechanics or gameplay techniques that were used in those 2 games that we built for system penetration testing? The first one, of course, was role play or use of avatar was used to influence the learner behavior. And then we used real life problem-based storytelling and the use of narrative created, as I said, the bond between the learner and the avatar. And that helped reinforce some of the learning, communicated through those games. It also enhanced engagement. And all the games were time-bound, had scores. This was to increase replayability and also for the learners to retain the skills that they learned. Last but not the least, the game was entirely built and was developed in offered the learners a simulated environment with some strategy as part of the gameplay. And this offered the learners, as I said earlier, a safe place for making mistakes without the fear of failure, and also to explore the impact of your actions in a controlled and a contextual manner. The second project that I led as part of the use of gamification within cybersecurity was Gcast, which is Gamified Intelligent Cyber Aptitude and Skills Training, of course. And it is currently hosted on OpenLearn, and it is free for all learners. You would be provided with a link to be able to register to this course and complete this course. And the purpose of Gcast was to, prior to the purpose, I'll probably tell what's the core principles behind Gcast. Gcast basically uses the concepts of game-based assessment, learner analytics, and adaptive personalization of learning content in order to promote intrinsic motivation and active learning experiences among adult learners through gamification. The course itself is aimed at adult learners. And the target learners for the main goal was to target the learners who do not normally have feel that they do not have the knowledge or the aptitude to reskill in this growing cybersecurity sector. So it's to break that entry barrier for those learners who lack the confidence or feel that they do not have the knowledge or the aptitude. Finally, of course, to demystify cybersecurity concepts, thereby endowing learners with confidence to engage with the digital world, gain further digital skills to enhance their career options, to navigate in this changing sort of digital economy that we live in. The course itself, as I said, is hosted freely available for all learners on OpenLearn. It has 24 hours of study spread across 8 weeks of learning, and the project was funded by Nesta and by the Department for Education. Let me quickly show you how the Gcast as a course functions, operates. Each week, the learning begins with a game. Okay, game that plays out a story-based scene to the learners, and the learners make some decisions based on the scenarios And these scenarios are basically designed to have some parallel analogy to real life. And based on the decisions the learners make as part of the story and the scenarios, the current cybersecurity knowledge and the skill of the learners are assessed. And then the learners are directed to an adapted learning pathway to suit their current level of knowledge. So there's sense of game-based assessment, but more importantly, a personalized learning journey for the learners as part of Gcast. Here's a short snippet of what the game looks like. So game basically starts with a general set of instructions to play, and then a set of concepts, information on the concepts that's being assessed, a relatable scenario or story. As I said, story that normally has some parallel analogy to real life, and then lots of interaction, queries, and responses. And at the end of the game, the learners receive a feedback. And the feedback is either if the learner has met the learning outcome. So the learners who meet the learning outcome are provided with an amber learning pathway as their chosen or recommended learning pathway. And learners who do meet the learning outcomes designed as part of the game are directed to the green learning pathway as their recommended learning pathway, right? So for instance, if you are directed to an amber learning pathway, you would start your learning from section 1 of week 1. Whereas if you were directed to a green learning pathway, you would jump straight to section 1.3 of week 1 as part of your learning journey. So this sort of enables the learners to embark on a very personalized, adapted learning journey. The course was launched on the 4th of January, 2021. We are about 10 weeks into the course, and a number of statistics show a huge impact of what the course has done to the learners. We've had more than 50,000 learners access the course, and we've got more than 270 people completing the course and successfully and receiving that digital badge. And we've had 30% of our learners being female and 67% being male, and 33% of our learners belonging to the Black, Asian, and ethnic minorities. 81% of our learners say that they've chosen this course for professional development. So what do they say about the course and the games itself? Most importantly, the 89% of our learners were low confidence, low skilled learners to begin with. And 87% of our learners claim to have known more, end up knowing more about cybersecurity and cybersecurity skills than when they started. 77% feel the games actually helped them understand the cybersecurity concepts better. And most of them felt that their games were informative, funny, entertaining, all at the same time. The games, one of the learners did say, the games made me understand the course content better, help reinforce my knowledge in a fun way. So that was the whole intention. So as I said earlier, Gcast as a course is still live and made available to all learners on OpenLearn, and you're free to register and complete the course. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, Chitra. That was really, really fascinating. And we have some time to take some questions from folks who have been listening and watching. So the first question was around the demographics of the participants. So it says, the question asks, your game had 30% female learner population. So how close is that to the industry standard, and how could we make this more inclusive to a greater variety of learners?
That is a wonderful question. Thank you, Arisha. Yes, absolutely. 30% is far higher than the overall industry standard. There's a very, I wouldn't know the exact number, it's a very low percentage of women representation in technology sector as a whole, even lower within cybersecurity. There's a lot of things that we could do to encourage more female learners into cybersecurity, into technology at large. There are initiatives taken by government. We've got Cyber Girls First. to encourage young female students from schools and secondary schools to start, to make them curious about cybersecurity as a subject area. In terms of teaching and learning content, even as part of designing the qualifications and curriculum that I'm involved with, I'm always conscious about how do I include elements for the wider participation, particularly bringing in this diversity and inclusion, bringing in more women into the space. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Chitra. So a follow-up question, well, a different question actually, is around how the areas in which gaming could be applied as a teaching tool. So what other areas do you think gaming could be applied as a teaching tool?
I think gaming, not necessarily digital games. Game is a much wider word. Play is a much wider context than just digital games. Could be used in all learning contexts, in all training and awareness contexts. Because, as I said, I firmly believe gameplay or play is the most natural way of learning. Not to say that game or gamification is going to replace the current way of teaching or learning or delivery. They would wisely complement the methods that we are currently using. They could make up for some of the shortcomings, particularly engaging the learners, grabbing their attention, enabling repetitive tasks for a skill development, perhaps. So yeah, games could be used in all learning, training, awareness contexts. As I said, the power of game, lends those features.
Yeah, really interesting. So the next question relates to Gcast in particular. So Gcast looks to be aimed at beginners. So would this method work for more advanced cybersecurity skills?
Absolutely, it would. In fact, the first project that I showed, Cybergate, was for system penetration testing. You couldn't get more advanced than that within cybersecurity. Except that the game mechanics and the techniques and how the game itself is built differs. If it's for a beginner intermediary level, so it will have more gameplay and less technology. Technical elements, I meant, but if it's for more advanced topic areas, the balance would be different. So it's certainly apt for teaching more advanced topic areas, and my experience with Cybergate shows that it's effective.
Yeah, that's really great. So there aren't any more questions at the moment. But of course, we'll have some time at the end of the session as well for further questions and discussion. So it's probably a good time to move on to the second part of today's session, which is a slight change in topic and in area, but related, of course, because we're still thinking about security and privacy, and particularly looking at security and privacy in relation to the Internet of Things. So I'm going to be talking about some of the research that we've been doing here in the School of Computing and Communications at the Open University in this area. And the work I'm talking about is work that's been done together with PhD students and researchers in the school over a number of years. So as the talk goes on, we'll be sharing some links to the research of the different people involved, so you can learn a bit more about the work of these PhD students as well. So privacy by design for the Internet of Things. It's a very broad topic, particularly because the notion of privacy is something that isn't easy necessarily to define. It has different meanings in different contexts. It's quite subjective, and it's not a constant quality. It's something that changes depending on the person and the situation in which it's being considered. But ultimately, the notion of privacy by design is about thinking about privacy upfront as part of the way we design technologies, think about how they're going to be used, and how we can ensure that the privacy of the users, the people who interact with these technologies, is being maintained. And generally, privacy is seen as a quality that is about protecting someone's space, whether that's their physical space or their informational space, and giving them control over who has access to that space. And in that sense, it's distinct from security, where security, or the closest aspect of security that relates to privacy, is often the one of confidentiality, keeping information secret, preventing others from accessing your information. But privacy, although privacy depends on that type of security, the ability to keep secrets where needed, it's also much broader. And as I'll explain in my talk, it covers the notions of helping people be aware of how their information is being accessed and used, and giving them control over how information is accessed and used as well. So I want to look at this area of privacy in the context of a particular technology or set of technologies called the Internet of Things. So let me start by talking a little bit about what I mean by that. So the Internet of Things is something that has become much more pervasive over the last decade or so, with a huge proliferation of electronic devices, digital technologies that are embedded in our lives, whether that's in the form of smart watches or smart TVs, or even the notion of smart fridges is taking shape, and there are instances of smart fridges being available. And fundamentally, these technologies, these digital technologies, are also connected to each other and to the internet. And so that's why we talk about the Internet of Things. And these technologies have applications in a whole range of areas, from transportation, so from simple things in transportation like navigation, to actually controlling how traffic moves around a city and coordinating the movement of vehicles with the traffic control mechanisms that might be embedded in a city infrastructure. But then you have other areas like food and agriculture. So you might be using Internet of Things technologies to monitor the conditions in a field and decide when to provide particular resources, whether that's fertilizer or water, and so on. And in other areas of society, we see increasing use of Internet of Things technologies, like in policing and in managing our health and well-being. And this list is not exhaustive. There are many other areas that are applicable here as well. And what happens generally, well, a very common form that these technologies take in our daily lives are things like smart speakers, smart watches, smart TVs, internet-connected audio devices like Bluetooth headphones, and so on. And these are really prevalent now in our society and are widely used by many people. So when we think about these technologies, we have to think about not just the benefits that they bring and how they can help us in order to live lives that are more convenient, more informed, more engaged, but also the things that can go wrong. And often what we find is actually that we have not an Internet of Things per se, but an Internet of insecure things. And there are plenty of examples in the news, both historically and recently, that help us see how these things can be insecure and have problems. So here's an article from over 5 years ago called The Internet of Stupid Things. And it tells of a story where an Internet of Things device was programmed in a particular way with quite poor programming practices. That meant that as these Internet of Things devices were bought by people and plugged in around the country, they started contacting a particular service because there was a bit of hard-coded data, a hard-coded IP address of a particular device, a particular server in all of these devices. And as more and more of these devices got sold, then the service that was hard-coded started to be overwhelmed with requests and couldn't cope. There are also examples of smart home devices being hacked, being taken over by malicious actors through and being used then to attack other services. So One of the more famous examples is something known as the Mirai botnet, which was a network of Internet of Things devices that were taken over by hackers and then used to launch denial of service attacks to cause internet services to be inaccessible and unavailable. And often these types of attacks, we need to look at how we can update the software on Internet of Things devices reliably in order to prevent them from being a problem. And then we have examples like the configuration of Internet of Things devices, and some research that was done again about 4 or 5 years ago, which looked at the configuration of internet connected toys and also baby monitors, and found that often they were not reconfigured to have secure passwords and could be found using IoT search engines. So these are search engines that are specialized to find Internet of Things devices that are connected to the network, and through them then for attackers to gain access. And so this highlights the importance of configuration of these devices as an important way of ensuring that they're kept secure. So essentially, we live in a world where the Internet of Things has all of these possible benefits and features, but actually can also cause a lot of problems. And this is captured by a cartoon by Randall Munroe, who draws the XKCD series of comics, where you have this best case, worst case scenario where when you first bought your device, you're kind of on a 50-50 territory of the engineers of these devices continuously working to keep them secure and keep you from being attacked in any way. But over time, as those engineers move on and start working on newer devices, actually the likelihood is that your appliance is going to be successfully hacked and being used for nefarious purposes. So ultimately, security is really important, and some of the things Chitra was talking about in how we train and develop the next generation of security professionals is a key thing in how we secure the Internet of Things. And it does underpin how we ensure the privacy of users of these Internet of Things devices. And so I'm now going to move on to talking about privacy and how we can use the concept of awareness and control to think more broadly beyond just security, and to ensure that people can have control over how others can access their information and their physical space. So ultimately, privacy goes beyond security, as I've said, and one of the key things that is required is that individuals have a sense of being in control of their personal space and their personal information. And how we provide that awareness and then how we provide control is really important, because one model of thinking about it is to say, well, users should be required to think about their privacy requirements and configure their systems in advance in order to ensure that their privacy is maintained. But in practice, that is quite difficult because privacy is very contextual. There's such a wide variety of types of information that could be accessed and situations in which the information could be accessed. So part of the research that we're doing is looking at how we can ensure that users have better awareness and control in their day-to-day life without having to divert their attention from the activities that they're involved in. And to this end, what we've been looking at are interfaces that could help with this. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. I beg your pardon.
Bless you, Arusha.
Thank you, Chitra. So the interfaces that we need to develop in order to enable awareness and control can take many forms. But in order to integrate them into our lives, we think that they should be things that are always with us and are very intuitive to use. So here's a scenario of where we want this type of control. So here there are two friends, Adam and Bob, are in a cafe, and a mutual friend, Charlie, tries to use one of these location tracking apps, Buddy Tracker, to try and locate Adam. And in normal circumstances, Adam wouldn't have any awareness or control that Charlie looked up his location, other than the fact that some time ago in the past, he gave Charlie permission to look him up on this Buddy Tracker app. But in our scenario, what we'd like to enable is to give Adam some awareness, and we do this through a mechanism or a metaphor we call the privacy itch, some awareness that Charlie is trying to access his location. So this itching sensation warns Adam of the location request. And then Adam can react to that, respond to that, take control essentially by scratching his forearm to set his privacy location preference. And that's the metaphor of a scratch. And by doing that, depending on where he scratches his forearm, he can decide whether he should provide his exact location to Charlie or a more vague general location, or perhaps not to share his location at all. So here's an example of giving users greater awareness and control in their day-to-day lives, unobtrusively, intuitively, and in an ad hoc manner, so that they can really be in charge of their privacy in a world where they're carrying technologies that allow their privacy to be invaded if they didn't have this type of awareness and control. The other aspect of privacy is how do we support engineers in thinking about privacy systematically when designing and developing Internet of Things applications. And that's the next area that I wanted to look at. But before that, I'll just explain a little bit about the privacy band. So the technology you just saw in that example, we actually implemented into a prototype called the privacy band, which has the communication technologies like a Bluetooth-enabled microprocessor that can talk to your mobile phone and interact with the applications that are trying to access your information. And also a set of these vibrotactile actuators, so vibration motors, and also the patches on the side of the band in order to receive the control input. So that's the privacy band. As I said, I want to now look at how we help designers, engineers design privacy into their Internet of Things applications. So fundamentally, design is a process of being able to try things, but then ask systematic questions about the design in order to know, in order to figure out how well it meets the requirements. And in the context of privacy, we need to enable designers to ask a range of questions to think about the types of information that they might be collecting, the appropriateness of that information, the appropriateness of how it can be shared, and so on. And prior research that has looked at this came up with a set of high-level strategies, which are shown on the side here. So you have minimization, hiding, separation, aggregation, and so on. So it's shown vertically on this slide. And what we did was to look at how each of those high-level strategies might map to the particular design features of an Internet of Things application. And in that, thinking about the minimization of data acquisition, the different types of data sources being used, how much raw data that you ingest into your application, and so on. And then systematically thinking through the other aspects of the design that could support privacy. So hiding particular key information. So for example, data anonymization, which is guideline number 8 here. So by thinking through these things systematically, we were able to come up with these 30 guidelines that would inform and help designers think about the privacy of their Internet of Things application. And in order to determine how useful these were, what we did was to take a group of designers, application designers, and give them the task of designing a number of Internet of Things applications. And initially, they were just told to come up with a design for their Internet of Things application. Then they were told a little bit to think about privacy and how they might revise their design. And finally, they were shown these guidelines and given information about the guidelines and told once more to make some further revisions to their design. And so here on this slide, what you can see are some examples of the designs that these folks came up with. And in blue is their initial design, and then using different colors, they annotated the design once they were prompted about privacy and once they were given the guidelines as some further information to help them. And what we found was that when they did their initial design, there was nothing said about privacy. Very few of the possible privacy measures that were applicable to these designs were identified. So the applications had very few privacy features built into them. When we asked the designers to think about privacy, they came up with a few more examples of privacy features, privacy measures that could be integrated into their application, but not that many more. So where they, on average, for each design came up with less than 5 with no privacy. When they were told to think about privacy, they could only come up with about 6 or 7 on average. But then when we gave them the framework, the privacy by design guidelines framework that we'd created, they were able to come up with many, many more. And on average, they could come up with over 30 different privacy features that should be integrated into these applications. So this just goes to show the importance of thinking about privacy systematically when designing Internet of Things applications. The final example I want to talk about is how we think about privacy and engineer it into these Internet of Things applications in order to support effective privacy, particularly in situations where people are sharing spaces and the potential for privacy to be violated because of how we interact with our Internet of Things devices might be a problem. So here, this is some work done by a PhD student, Akshika Vijayasundara, in our lab. And what Akshika has been looking at is how in a shared space where like a smart home, for example, where you have devices like smart speakers and smart TVs, how might the privacy of individuals, both in terms of the information being shared and also their space, their private space, might be affected if we didn't have mechanisms to improve the privacy and adapt the interfaces appropriately to protect privacy. So in this first example video, one person in the house is trying to meditate. They don't want to be disturbed. Someone else wants to play some music over a smart speaker.
Alexa, play some music.
And now the adaptation system prompts the user to say, there's a privacy problem here because Blaine is meditating. So to pick an alternative form of output for listening to the music. And so they pick the headphones, which is a more private option. And as a result, Blaine's privacy, the privacy of his physical space, is uninterrupted. But the main user can also still listen to their music as well. So the system, the home, adapts in order to provide the functionality, but also protect the privacy. Here's another example where information privacy might be violated. Someone is trying to access some personal information over a smart speaker.
Alexa, what's my blood glucose level?
And just as they request that, someone else moves into the room, and had the smart speaker just said out loud that private information, the other person would have heard it. So instead, the interface adapts and presents the private information through a private interface, the smartwatch in this case. And again, that's an example of how an adaptive system can help support the privacy of people where there are these Internet of Things devices and applications in operation. And this whole approach has been implemented as an adaptive system where we model the information needed to understand the capabilities of the interfaces and the privacy preferences of individuals, and then have a control layer which takes that information in and determines what adaptation to apply to the view layer, which are the devices with these interfaces themselves. So when we think about the Internet of Things, and we have a whole range of devices that are connected to each other, there's a number of different ways in which that they can negatively affect our privacy. But by thinking systematically about how to engineer these and providing mechanisms like adaptive interfaces and so on, we can ensure that these Internet of Things devices are providing privacy by design. We can provide tangible interfaces for awareness and control, use privacy guidelines to ensure that the design of these applications are privacy compliant, and also use the idea of adaptive interfaces to ensure that privacy is available and implemented into the way people interact with these Internet of Things devices. So with that, I'm going to end my talk. And if you want some more information, there's a website to our research group there, and some other links to the School of Computing and Communications will be shared as well. But yeah, I'm happy to take some questions. So stop sharing.
Thank you, Arishad. That was a very interesting talk, particularly on how the concept of privacy and security is a shared responsibility between the users taking ownership of it, as well as designers designing these technologies with security and privacy at the heart. Amazing talk, thank you. And we've got a stream of questions for you. The first question, of course, is privacy is getting compromised with less connected smart devices now. How are we going to ensure with the increasing number of devices being added to the future, added in the future? Perhaps to rephrase that question from one of the users, called Shankar, is how are we going to prepare ourselves, with the flood of devices that are joining this Internet of Things cloud? Is there anything that we should keep in mind?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, Sanka. Thank you for asking it. So one of the key things, I think, is recognizing making privacy a key or a main consideration in the design and development of these technologies. And we're seeing that to some extent with the way regulation is being put in place around. So there's the kind of different forms of regulation, but some stricter forms of regulation where devices are collecting and processing and using personal information, particularly where that information is being shared with service providers by being collected in centralized databases. Regulation like GDPR, for example, in Europe, and similar data protection regulations around the world provide some mechanisms to ensure that privacy is considered as part of the design and is continuously monitored for compliance. But we also need to think about how we ensure that designers can integrate privacy into the design and development of these technologies. And I think that's where some of the techniques, the technique I talked about just now, this design guidelines, the notion of design guidelines and design patterns, things that make it easier for designers and engineers to integrate privacy into the technology will be really crucial. At the moment, the pressure to get something out to market and the complexity of thinking about privacy work against each other, or in some ways, work in tandem to push out technologies that are not privacy compliant or privacy aware. Whereas if we can make the process and provide tools to make it easier for engineers to think about privacy and build privacy into the technologies, then that should mitigate some of that pressure and make sure that privacy is an integral part of the technology that's deployed. So yeah, hopefully.
The next question is from Bharat. He asks, does cybersecurity strategies differ between securing IoT devices and securing a normal PC connected to an enterprise network or even a cloud?
So at one level, not. I think at a basic level, you have an internet connected computer. You need to be able to make sure that it's configured in a secure way, that you can update its configuration and its software when new vulnerabilities are discovered, control its access to other devices across the network. So all of these features are common across whether you have a desktop PC, a mobile device, or an Internet of Things device like a smart light bulb. The challenge comes in the way that these devices are significantly constrained in terms of their resources, network connectivity, the amount of processing power they have, and sometimes even the amount of battery power they have if they're a completely wireless, untethered device, which means you can't necessarily use exactly the same methods. So the notion of updating software, for example, on a normal standard PC or a laptop, you can have some reliability around its network connection when it will be able to download a large piece of software and update itself, or for an administrator to force it to update. With an IoT device, you may not know when it's next going to be connected in order to transmit some data. When it does, it won't necessarily have enough bandwidth to download an update. And how do you ensure that that update is actually a reliable one, one that should be applied? And so these features of the Internet of Things make them it makes it more challenging. You can't apply the same techniques. Another key feature of the Internet of Things technologies is, of course, that they often interact with the physical environment and therefore can be attacked not just via the network, but via the physical environment. So a very dramatic example of this is in the use of gyroscopes to control the flight of drones or other kinds of devices, Internet of Things devices that aren't just measuring the environment, but actually actuating them moving around a space. And what was found was that if you can target the device, the gyroscopes, with some ultra low frequency sound that hits the resonant frequency of the physical device, the gyroscopes will pick up that vibration and send all kinds of mixed messages to the microprocessor and cause the drone or the device to shut down, basically. And you can't really predict for that in the software or in a standard way of protecting a computing device, basically. So.
Thank you, Arsha. There's a question from Daniel. I'm not sure it could apply to the two of us. Are there hands-on practical labs or workshops related to cybersecurity available for the undergraduate students who are interested in research? Is there any research facility or lab interface made available to students, our undergraduate students? Arsha, would you like to take this?
Yeah, I can start, and maybe you can pick it up as well, Chitra, because I think it applies across both our talks and both our areas of work. So at the Open University at the moment, from a research point of view, we don't really have a mechanism to easily bring students into practical lab environments to participate in our research at a distance. And that's partly because the majority of our students all of our undergraduate students are working with us at a distance. But in our curriculum, certainly, we do use virtual computing infrastructures, and we have lab environments where students can get hands-on experience of a whole variety of different configurations of computing devices and networks, and try out various cybersecurity activities. And Chitra, maybe you want to explore and expand a little bit more about the undergraduate curriculum in that area.
Yes, absolutely. Sort of extending to what Arsha mentioned already, the scope for undergraduate students to sort of engage in research sort of activities as part of their undergraduate project. If they do take up areas and topics that are that aligns with the type of research that happens within Open University, the School of Computing and Communication, they could always reach out to those academic experts to either gain access or perhaps point you to those open source labs and resources that's available for you to conduct your research in the area of cybersecurity. So yeah, there's opportunity and availability of resources, open source and free and open source resources as well. Wonderful. There's one question on Gcast that we missed. Is there a minimum age for the gamified intelligence, cyber aptitude and skills training? No, there isn't a minimum age. It's open for everyone. However, the reason I said the course itself was built for adult learners is adult learners who are new to digital and cybersecurity skills will find it more beneficial. Their the entry barrier is lowered for them by use of game-based techniques and adaptation. But the course itself is built for all learners and acts as an introductory level of study for cybersecurity concepts. So there is no actual minimum age. You could, if you enjoy the subject area, you can register and complete it. But the adult learners aged between 21 to 65 who are new to digital skills and technology will find it particularly advantageous doing this course.
Thanks, Chitra. There's another question from Sankar, which, given both our research interests in Internet of Things, might be something you can pick up on as well, which is around how to manage the electronic waste related to IoT technologies. Many small devices that will become part of our lives, and all of these will have kind of obsolescence built into them, that they will stop being useful after a period of time. Do you have any views on that?
Well, yes, I certainly share your concern with the proliferation, the number of devices, from the personal computing times when, a family owned a PC. Now we have each person owning multiple devices. So I share your concern in terms of what could be potentially the way forward. Perhaps green technologies that are built and designed with sustainability and recycling at the heart is the way forward. I do not have answers yet. I'm sure the research community is working towards that. They're all aware of what a big challenge this is going to be in the days and years to come.
Yeah, I think the other thing, I guess, is to recognize that many of these devices have actually quite valuable raw materials inside them, whether that's, gold plate on electrical contact points, to other valuable metals and so on. So I think there'll probably be an increasing demand and opportunity for recycling of these devices to recover those materials, which are otherwise quite hard to obtain from natural sources, and to recycle them into future manufacturing. Definitely outside my domain of expertise. This is much more a challenge and area for materials engineers. And at the OU, in our faculty, we have colleagues who are working on these areas of waste management, but it's definitely a challenge.
Yes, absolutely. There are no other questions, Arisha. We could thank the audience who've joined us this afternoon. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Arisha, for a wonderful talk, a peek into the really cutting-edge research that we are doing at the school.
Thank you very much, Chitra, and yeah, likewise to you. I think it was your talk was a really interesting view of how different ways of approaching the teaching of cybersecurity can have really profound impacts and engagement from learners. And yeah, so I think it's been a really great session, and I appreciate all the engagement from the audience online as well, giving us lots of great questions. And hopefully everyone can access the links that we've shared to find out more about the work of the School of Computing and Communications at the Open University, both in terms of our curriculum and our research, but also the wider work of the Open University in the area of cybersecurity and distance education of cybersecurity. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chitra, for your participation, and thank you to everyone for listening today.
Thank you all.
Thank you.